The information and opinions presented in this podcast are for general information only. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed are the speaker's own and in no way are meant to be taken as case facts. We do not have knowledge of any persons being listed as a suspect and are in no way pointing to any individual as being guilty of a crime.
Scary clues in the disappearance of a gorgeous young daughter, just 20, who leaves odd traces behind before she seemingly vanishes from a roadside restaurant. That restaurant also tied to the death of a 20.
We just want the truth. We want answers. We hear a lot of rumors and stuff, and then it changes from one moment to the next between people and places and scenarios, and it's just gotten so overwhelming. I mean, we want the real truth, and we want to be able to find our Keeslyn and bring her home. And, I'm holding on for a miracle.
Hello and welcome to Curious Conversations. We are your hosts, Carly and Mandy, and today we're talking about a missing persons case that is actually very close to home for both of us. We're talking about Keeslyn Noelle Roberts, who's been missing since January of 2020. Keeslyn was last seen at the Flying J in Resaca, Georgia, and the details of her disappearance are strange.
They are strange. So I don't know nearly as much about this as you do, but pretty much everyone in North Georgia, I'd say, has heard about this case. It's strange. It's bothersome. It's probably our most curious case yet, like as far as an episode. I think it's the kind of case that you want to just keep searching for more information. The more you learn about it, the way it branches out, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll say I heard about Keeslyn's disappearance like many others in the area. And that was by way of social media. So, there were so many different views and opinions, though, on the subject that it was just it was chaotic and no one really knew the full truth of the situation. And so I had kids that were her age at the time, and it was, okay, is it the area? Is there someone bad out there? You just didn't know what was going on. What about you? Like, do you remember the first time you heard about it, or?
Yeah, I do. So I heard, I saw something on WDNN out of Dalton, Georgia. So it's Connie Hall Scott's show, The Talk with Connie, and she was interviewing Keeslyn's dad, and I stopped. It got my attention, missing girl and in our area. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how have I not heard about this? It was early on, but I had to listen to that. And there was a lot of information. And he was just like that panicked, driven father, in the interview. And it was sad. It was scary. Like you say, you've got kids, and it was bothersome. It stuck with me.
Yeah, the first time that I really heard solid facts about the case was when I sat down with Eric and Shannon, that's Keeslyn's dad and mother. Connie was prepping for that episode that you're talking about. She knows that I kind of work on cold cases, and she brought me in. And it was a very emotional meeting to sit with Eric and Shannon. There is, I'll just say, an overwhelming sadness at all times. I mean, you can feel their heart, their love for their daughter, the desperation in their voice. And this was a few years ago, and it was just really, really heartbreaking. But it was a great meeting. I
Mhm.
feel very honored to have had that opportunity to sit down with them and to hear. I mean, they told me about Keeslyn as a person, as a little girl, just a normal kid, um, free-spirited, fun-loving, running around, just having a good time. And I love that I got to know that side of Keeslyn before really digging into the rest of my time with them. Now I did. There were a lot of names that were dropped, and you can see all of that online. Just all of the details unfolding from there. There was a lot. But having been able to meet her mom and dad, and then she has an incredible aunt that runs a Facebook page, and you can just feel the love that she has for Keeslyn. I was really glad to have had that experience with that family, but it drove it home for me of I can't stop. I can't stop. They're on my heart so heavy.
Yeah, that's very different to talk. Most people don't get that opportunity to talk directly to the family, to the people involved. And you and I have been friends like 8 or 9 years, and that was still early on. And we weren't working on anything together. We didn't have the podcast yet. And
Right.
so you were doing your thing, I was doing my thing at the time. And you were heavily involved in this. And there was a drive when we would talk. I knew you were very driven and you were very it did touch your heart. And I learned a little bit from Connie as well. And but I'm still piecing things together here. So with all the passion that you've had for working on cases like this, like being involved, talking to the people that were involved, looking at all the details, um, let's just go straight to this. So let's talk about the details of the day she went missing. Um, she was living in Murray County. She was 20 years old, right? Last time she was seen. And that was at the Flying J truck stop in Resaca, not far from where either of us are.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very close to home.
Yeah.
Yeah. Keeslyn gave a friend a ride to work.
Mhm.
Um, and he worked at the Denny's restaurant. So that is built into that Flying J gas station.
Right.
Yeah, it's kind of like they're one building. They have
Yeah.
two doors, but they're
Yeah.
all in one building.
Yeah. That used to be a popular thing, like with the truck stops and stuff. I don't know if it is as much anymore, but a lot of them would have like either the Denny's, one of these, franchise type places, or they'd have like a country cooking something. That's very common.
Yeah, yeah. So the Flying J in general is I mean it's what I would expect. I don't go to a lot of truck stops. I don't like to drive in the same parking lot with trucks because they're big.
They
So
are.
so I'll just choose a different gas station. But you've got the Flying J, which is where anyone can stop and get gas. Around the back, you have parking for trucks, and they can park there overnight. But there's different facilities inside of those showers, and I'm not really sure, like a little lounge area. And then connected to that building is the Denny's, and that is where her friend Chris worked. And she takes him to work. Now, after she drops him off, she did end up on the other side of the building. So she was found, in the gas station part. And you can see her on camera in the back room of the Flying J. It's like a kitchen area. And she's back there. She looked very panicked, very scared. I'll say that, if you watch it, and the witness from the gas station that found her back there, she just looked very panicked. She was even ducked down behind a counter at one point when a couple of employees came in and they told her, "Hey, you're not allowed to be here."
Okay. So if our listeners can like get this visual in their head, so if you're looking straight on, you've got Denny's all the way to the right,
Hmm.
and you've got parking over there. You've got truck parking behind, and then you have a little bit of like a little walkway behind the Denny's and the truck stop. So you could go into Denny's, or you could go on down and go into the truck stop. Correct?
That's correct. Yeah. Yep.
So looking straight on, and you go in. the kitchen that you're talking about would be more towards the left before you get to the kind of the truckers lounge, the showers and all that. So it's about 2/3 of a way away from Denny's to the
Mhm.
left. Okay.
Yep. Yep.
So
That's correct.
that's where she was, and you could see that she was panicked, and either she was, you got to assume she was scared, somebody, some sort of situation, and ducked in here to hide, right?
Yeah, I believe there was possibly a person either in the store or right outside of the store, maybe that she saw. That would be, I mean, my first instinct says, well, she was scared of someone. It had to have been someone she knew and maybe someone that she was afraid of. No idea. There are no cameras outside. But there could possibly be maybe some dash cam footage from that day. I know a lot of trucks have dash cams,
Right.
and they're parked behind the entire building. So, I don't know if anyone's tried to attain footage from dash cams or even in the front parking lot. A lot of cars have dash cams now. Um, maybe the video footage from inside of the building could catch a face that might be familiar to the case. I don't know. I'm interested. I'd like to know what effort has been made by law enforcement to determine like who might have been in the store that same day that Keeslyn would have known.
Yeah. Now, when she was seen there, she wasn't seen talking to anybody. Wasn't with anyone. You don't see her like off camera speaking towards anyone. She seems to be alone and most likely hiding, trying to get away from
Yep.
something.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. So it's speculation as to what she was scared of, right? That's all we can go on.
That's it. That's it. It feels like a lot of her case is speculation.
Yeah, that's what it seems like to me too. And some of these things almost seem like, I'd say, practical speculation. Someone ducks in, hides, looks fearful. You can almost guess they're trying to get away from somebody or a situation, try to wait out a situation. Those seem like pretty sure ideas, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Okay. So, okay, so she's in the back of this back area, this kitchen area, and they ask her to leave. What happens next?
She left. She actually left through the back of the building. So they did tell her, you can't be here, and her response was that she was looking for her friend, the same guy that she dropped off for work. They explained to her that he didn't work in the Flying J, he worked in the Denny's. So that kind of alludes to the fact that she passed the back door of the Denny's and ended up at the back door of the Flying J. They saw her, she's soaking wet. They feel sorry for her. They let her in. And instead of, leaving through the store entrance, she's crouched down in the back, and they have to explain that she's in the wrong area altogether.
She wants to go out that door, so she obviously doesn't want to go back through the front of the store or through Denny's to the other side of the building. So
Yeah.
she and someone's in the common area is what you can assume at this point, and she just wants to get, because otherwise you would think if you're scared, you don't go out into the dark where you can't see as well. You would go in a public area. So she's not wanting to be spotted, is what it seems like, because nobody's going to be hurt probably right out there in the common area with a lot of people. I mean, it's a busy place, right?
Yeah, yeah, of course. It is a busy place, a lot of people in and out. And she chose to leave through that back door that leads to just the back of the building.
So the workers called the cops after she leaves, and she dropped some items behind. Can you tell us about what she left behind and how that came to be?
So she left behind a backpack. We do know that it contained a wallet, debit card, phone charger. It contained cash, which is always a telling sign. No one leaves behind cash. She was holding a pair of pants and a pack of cigarettes, which were dropped. So I think that, I think the backpack was forgotten because she was startled. And I will say, you can read a lot about a confrontation that she had with the employee, but that isn't actually how it played out. There wasn't a confrontation. She was asked to leave, and she did. So she drops what's in her hand and she's forgotten that backpack and she leaves. Her car, however, never left the parking lot. She's gone. But her cell phone was never recovered. Her cell phone was not in the backpack or the car.
Okay, so then we don't know if the cell phone remained with her or it was taken from the car. Is that what you're saying? We don't know anything about the cell phone, really.
No, we don't know. Her cell phone would make some calls later, which we'll get into, but at this point in the story, no idea where the cell phone is.
Okay, you can't do anything but speculate again on what the person who saw her, what their thought is. Did they see her drop something? This is what I'm thinking. I'm an employee. I see somebody drop something. I call out, hey, you dropped this. Do we know if anything like that happened, or we just know that was seen after she rushed out? It sounds like a rush out to me.
I do think it was a rush out. Her actions were hurried as if something was wrong. And if I'm recalling correctly, the manager did look out of the back door, saw Keeslyn. She was standing on the sidewalk, but said she turned her head, looked back, and when she looked back that second time, Keeslyn just was no longer there.
Okay, because yeah, I'm thinking there's something to consider here. We're looking at a full picture. Anybody else is looking at a full picture. That day that this happened, they're in the moment. How much would you put into it if you would have known where this would have went? That
Right.
looks different. But you're working, somebody's in there, you say, get out of here, and they race out, and then you look and you see the stuff there, and it's just as simple as that. Looking at the full picture, I kind of think, were those items dropped on purpose, like a hint, left by accident? But if she's hurried, it probably is just safe to assume that that was an accident and she dropped those running out.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. I mean, you just really don't know. And it's like you said, if you knew the full story, you would handle it different in the moment. Hindsight is 2020. But the workers didn't know. It was just, oh, there's someone in here and they're not supposed to be in here, get them out. Even the cops that came, you know, the I'm sorry, the manager called the cops and said, we have a bag here. And they said, well, just keep it. She'll probably come back for it. No one knew that it was as big or as a dangerous situation as it was. No one had any idea in the moment.
Gosh, doesn't that make you just sort of, the more you think about this sort of thing, as things happen to you, you want to be present. You want to be in the moment. You want to be taking in the whole picture of something in case it is something serious. You don't know who out there is doing something in a moment of panic. They're not safe, even if it's just like maybe a domestic abuse type situation. You don't know what someone's dealing with, and you think they've just gotten into the wrong room and they're like running for their life.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. You never know.
So, the first time when I first learned about this, I see this story being covered by so many media outlets, even still, like just social media, a lot of opinions. You just don't know what to believe. In fact, my head was sort of spinning when I had to say stop. Some of the information's conflicting, some is just gossip, and maybe just guessing. They have a good heart and they're trying to guess. Like I'm saying right here, did she drop it on purpose? Just human guessing. But honestly, a lot of it I noticed too is one tale, just like rehashing that same story as the others. But so you've really studied this case, though. You've talked to the parents. You've been involved. What's your opinion of these stories being discussed? And do you think that most of them are credible? Do you have a different take on that?
Yeah, so I think that a lot of what is being covered is hearsay. So you have podcasters who are covering a new crime story every week, and they're just not able to do the research, and that's normal, that's understandable. You've got to have your content weekly, and so you're just kind of grabbing something, you're putting it out there, and you're hoping that it grabs someone's attention and it does some good. But they're not interviewing the public. They're not digging through police reports. They're not listening, to family members or friends that are involved in some aspect. They just don't have the time to do that. And so they're more than likely listening to another podcast and just grabbing what they can, whatever news story they can. They're regurgitating that information, and shallow details and misinformation are being spread. And then there's just a general lack of new information that's just not out there.
Yeah, I know for our podcast, we cover some things that have been sensationalized or things that are,
Mhm.
like docu-series we do. And we always take a step back from that and just share our personal opinions. And we're not doing the heavy research for that. This is different. And I think we knew when we decided that we wanted to do this episode that it was going to look different and need to be handled differently. And you'd already done the work on the backside. So it doesn't match up with the other things that we talk about from I guess, from a second or third point of view. Um, Now, Carly, I'd say I haven't heard any what I'd call new information in a while now. Have you about this particular case?
I've not heard anything put out uh publicly.
Right?
No. And it's you just are kind of like well, I mean, is it still being
Yeah.
worked on actively, or has this transitioned into a cold case? There's a lot of responsibility when you're digging into a case of not getting in the way, not messing up, an investigation that's being done by professionals. But at the same time, when you've got information, all you can do is pass it on, but it's really hard to know, was that taken seriously? There are so many tips that come in for these cases, and a lot of them are just insane. It would be a lot to follow and try to track.
All right. Well, let's continue with what we do know. So we know that she gave this friend a ride to work and was supposed to pick him back up at 10 o'clock. Is that right? 10 o'clock at
That's
night?
right. Yep.
Okay. This wasn't some new friend, somebody she met along the way. Is that correct? It's an established friendship.
Yeah, I think that she was close enough to this person that, it was a pretty constant in her life. It was
Yeah,
one of
she
her
knew him.
one of her crew.
Yeah, yeah, I gotcha. So give us a little bit more about after that. I
Yeah.
get a little bit fuzzy on what happened next.
Yep. So she gave him a ride to work. I do know that she was followed that day by another vehicle. She had an expired tag. And so she had someone travel behind her, I guess, maybe to block, law enforcement that might be driving in the same direction that would see that tag. Um, if you have another car behind you, they can't really catch that tag in their vision. So you get away with it. I don't know. And she backed into her spot at the Flying J, and that's how her car was backed in to that parking spot.
Okay, so I've done that. Like you've got a tail light not working, right? So follow
There you
me.
go.
I'm home. I'm not doing anything bad, but I don't want a ticket for a tail light, right? So
Right.
like probably I'll handle that later. Can you cover me in the moment? So yeah, I get that.
Yep.
But as for backing into a spot, is that strange? I know some people do, but do you think that was strange for her, or do you think it was just so no one would see the expired tag, or what do you think about that?
I will say her dad thought it was strange.
Okay,
And dad's no, that's just not how my
right.
daughter would park. So, he felt like she just didn't normally do that. That's not how she parked a car. And we do know in alongside of this case is another case that we're going to talk about at some point. But 2 days prior, another young adult, a young man, had backed into a parking spot just 5 spaces down where Keeslyn's car was found, and he disappeared also.
Okay, yeah. So, I mean, it's weird to me because I'm just not backing in anywhere. My husband backs everywhere. It's those little telltale signs of the
Yeah.
way. But okay, so let's talk just briefly. This is Caleb Smith, who you're talking about that backed in, right?
Yes.
I know that's episode. I don't want to say too much, but was it normal for him to back in? Did anyone say if that's normal for him to back into a parking spot?
Yeah, I don't know. He was backed in. There's some you can there we have pictures of his car and it looks very, I'll say haphazardly backed in, but I don't know if that was a normal thing for him.
Well, it's like two-edged sword here. I mean, you can think, well, can't read too much into the details. Things happen all the time. I'll go to Walmart today and there'll be two or three people backed in. Does that mean anything? But how do you not look at the common threads of two people that close together with similar situations, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say, you talk about common threads.
Mm-hmm.
There's something about these spots. So the parking that they were both in is actually it's off to the right of the restaurant, but it's all the way in the back, just in front of truck parking. So it seems like a lot of people back in right there. Like it's not a convenient area to back in your car. You'd have to come around the lot, pull up, and then pull back, and it would be very, I don't know, strange to do so all the time. But a lot of the cars that sit in those spots are backed in.
Okay, so you're saying so the parking spots are directly in front of the truck parking.
They are.
Yeah.
They are. There is truck parking behind them, and that's the only thing behind them other than woods. And I think there's a pond back there. But it's a big lot behind that smaller parking lot that's where the
Yeah.
trucks park.
I know a lot of people are distant. They're not right here. They don't have the opportunity to see these things. I just trying to paint a picture of what you and I have seen in person because you take that for granted too. Somebody has the image in their head where you're sharing the details. So I just kind of want to reiterate um, what that looks like. So uh,
Yeah. Well, you know what? I did a little digging and spent way too much time at a truck stop doing it. I
you did,
watched.
you did
I did.
really?
I did. I
Yeah,
did.
yeah,
I
kind
was
of.
pretty infatuated with this and trying to figure it all out. I watched cars pulling into the station. I counted how many cars pulled all the way around to the back, and of those cars, how many backed into a spot rather than just pulling straight into a spot. And it was a shocking percentage of people who would back in back there in the back of the lot. I then watched to see if I could find this like a similar activity from those drivers to see if there was like something they would signal a reason that they're there. I even backed my car into a spot several times to see could I get someone to approach my car, and I got nothing, no one. But it is possible that she did back in to hide her tag, but her dad, who picked up the car, he was the one to go and get the car. He did say that her seat was pushed all the way back to the point to where she would not have been able to drive had she just got in the car and tried to leave. That seat was pushed all the way back.
Okay. So I'm thinking about this, and you always take, or I do, I take a situation, run it through myself personally. In what situation would I do X, Y, Z, right? So
Yeah.
that's what you love digging in. You love trying to figure out what was going on, who was there, who was not there, who was involved, all these little details. So had someone else sat in her vehicle? Now I know for myself, I do this. I push my seat back when I'm going to hang out in my car for a minute. I undo my seatbelt and I push it back. If I've got some things to do, I'm looking through some papers, looking through my purse. It's a little bit of a habit if I'm going to be there for a minute. I don't know if that was the situation, or if someone else was in there. We don't know. Again, it's another speculation thing, but it's definitely, there had to have been a specific reason, although we don't know what it was.
Yeah, we don't know what that was. I tried pushing my seat all the way back, thinking maybe that's the clue. Maybe that's how you get someone to approach your car. That did not work either. I think my thoughts on that are maybe her friend who she
Mhm.
had given a ride to work that day, maybe he had driven the car. You just somebody will come out to the car and you're like, here, you drive. I'm going to be on my phone. You drive. Maybe she just rode with him that day and he drove and then he had the additional car behind to block the tag. Who knows? I think that that person, the person that was following, they would know who drove that car.
Right, exactly. And so, I love that you dig deep like this, and even though I guess you're in a way putting yourself at a risk trying to replicate the same situation to see if that gets attention. Of course, we are several years later, and it does make you wonder of the trends, for lack of a better word, at the time around this location. There's things that happen that might, after two people, after two instances, were people doing the same thing. Let's say it was a tale about something. Does that mean that they would still be doing it now? Had you been there like right after? So that may have been a trend at the time, and we don't know.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you really don't know, and things do change. You got to switch it up, stay fresh with it. That's how you
Right?
do things without getting caught. And so who knows? Because this was a couple of years after the fact, a few years after the fact, and so it's very possible that I was, too late to notice that. I think that's why it's so important to have cameras. There should have been
Oh,
cameras in the lot that day.
absolutely. Yeah, that is very concerning. I guess I sort of take that for granted when I'm somewhere.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, because
You
cameras,
think that's, yep, absolutely.
they're everywhere. So you've done some other, I guess, on scene experiments at the Flying J and in other instances too. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. As far as the Flying J in this case in particular, I watched the trucks come in and out to see if I could spot any strange activity. I videoed the trucks that were in the lot at different times to see if I could kind of pinpoint which ones moved and which ones seemed to be more of like permanent fixtures that didn't really ever seem to come and go from the lot. But again, it was after the fact. It was years after her disappearance. But I really just wanted to kind of get a feel for the area.
Hmm.
And when I was trying to debunk some of the sex trafficking theories that are out there,
Oh,
because I know that's huge. I know that's a real thing, and I know that sometimes can take place at those truck stop areas. And honestly, that was important to this case because some of Keeslyn's last text messages could make one consider sex trafficking in the area. And we know being so close to Atlanta that's a real thing.
well, it is, and we talk about the things that this being now, and we're looking at the past, and some of those things may have changed. Some things don't
Yeah.
change. Unfortunately, that is still very prevalent. That's something that I think is important to look at. The way people do things, that's still a thing. The way the truck stop set up, that's still a thing. There's a lot of constants, so you can play against that when you're making these considerations and you're digging or you're reenacting a situation. Some of those things just are. It doesn't matter if they changed over the years. Some things are a staple, right?
Yep. Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
I find all this fascinating, like being there, considering the different possibilities, playing things out so you can get the real feel, like we're talking about. Let me ask you, Keeslyn's car was not moved after she was missing. Walk us through what that the aftermath of this? She's gone. The car's there. What happened?
Yeah, she is gone. The car is sitting in the same place where she left it. Um, Her dad actually had to pick the car up later. So the car was not processed, and that's a big red flag. That there probably were some very telling signs within the car of it, even if it's not, directly related to her disappearance, just where she was, her mindset at the time, fingerprints, who was in the car, who touched the car. Those are all things that we won't know.
Gosh, I guess again, something I take for granted, right? Is that not a natural process? To process? I guess I thought it was.
Right, right. One would think.
Huh. Yeah. I guess it all depends on what the assumption was at that time or what the details implied, I guess.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Um, you know, I think that a lot of times law enforcement, their hands are tied. Um, they just can't jump right in and do all the
Yeah.
things they want to do. But you can look back after the fact and go, gosh, that really should have been done, but I don't know. How do you handle that?
Yeah. And we all get to look at that through a, broader scope and where, it's easy to say, why wasn't this done? Why didn't
Right.
inside ask this or that? Gosh, I would hate to think of maybe how I handled something and, left out. I guess, like you say, when you look back, you think, hey, why didn't this get asked? Why weren't there cameras? Why weren't there all of the things? Um,
Right.
the police is a different level. And as you say, their hands are often tied. You can't just do something on gut instinct, not legally.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Okay, let's step back just a bit. So Keeslyn, she missed an appointment, and that's how her dad knew something was wrong.
Yep.
Can't get in touch with her. He reaches out to the boyfriend. He tells Eric, is it Eric, and that he hasn't heard from Keeslyn, but her car is parked at the Flying J at this time.
Yeah, and I think it's worth mentioning too, just because why not? So Keeson had an ex-boyfriend who allegedly had a physical altercation with Keeslyn, and this was not long before her disappearance. And the Roberts have that conversation recorded. But it doesn't look like there's any contact between Keeslyn and the ex leading up to her disappearance, and there's no proof that he's ever been a suspect. But worth noting that she did tell someone at one point in her last text messages that he was keeping her kind of in a bad spot and she needed some help getting away from him.
Well, at every turn where there's what I see as very important information, there's a heck of a lot of speculation. And you want to be able to sift through that so that everything you have is like solid information. But yeah, it seems pretty important to the story to
Mhm.
me. Um, okay, I
It
know
would
there were,
definitely be something you couldn't just leave out. You've got to take that into consideration.
yes. Trouble is, there were a lot of people in Keeslyn's circle at the time that she disappeared, right? So,
Yeah, there were, and they were. It was a colorful crowd, I'll say that. It was just all from different backgrounds and involved in different things, and so you never know.
gosh, mine was too at that age. I mean,
Yeah,
you're just
yeah,
an adult. You've got friends from school, you've got new adult friends, maybe you've got older friends. You've got I would say that's a pivotal time for a mix of people before you sort of level out as an adult, right?
yes. Oh,
Uh,
absolutely, absolutely.
yeah. So that along with the story itself, I mean, okay, it's a lot. This case just gets stranger and stranger every time I hear about it. And next week, we're going to have a couple of guests join us who've been very involved in the case. We've got Tammy Painter Parker. She was recently on Real Murders of Atlanta speaking about the murder of her sister.
Mhm.
And um, she's been drawn into this case because of what she went through personally. Again, it's a very personal connection. You talk about personal connection with talking with the parents and all. She has this personal connection.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, she definitely she has the heart for it for sure. There was a just that she lost her sister and now Keeslyn comes on the scene and she has a desperation to help. You know, we've got to find this girl. And, you know, it just ties back to something she's gone through and you can feel that when you talk to her.
I see that a lot on social media that someone has been affected by either this case or another one, and they have a real passion to help pull anything together. You do not know which tiny detail might
Yeah.
make the difference. And so we're living in a time when we can cast that net out pretty far. And that's, I don't know, it gives a lot of hope. I don't want to use the word excited. That's the wrong choice, but hope, in having that out there.
Yes. Hopeful. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, we're also going to have Connie Hall Scott, and we mentioned her earlier with the talk with Connie, and but you may have seen her discussing this very case on Nancy Grace because she went to Nancy Grace with this.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. If you've not watched that, go back and watch it. It is
Yep.
a great episode. Nancy Grace is a bulldog about things, and so, you know, it's somebody you'd want on your side if you were looking for someone. But you know, Tammy and Connie have been just really imperative to the research put into this case. You know, Connie being the person that introduced me to the Roberts, she and I have spent hours going over facts and leads that have come in from her show. And they're going to be sharing with us about some time that they spent in Brackett Ridges, which is a location that continues to come up in researching for this case. We'll discuss the Flying J, where we were escorted out of the kitchen area. And then we'll be getting into some of the events that led up to the day of Keeslyn's disappearance.
I guess that's what happens when you dig too deep, right? You might get a smack.
Yeah, little smack on the hand.
I've been smacked on the hand before. It's that curious mind, right?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
When that the heart that makes the drive even stronger, right?
Yep, that's right.
So, yeah, if you've been following this case or you're just learning about the disappearance of Keeslyn Roberts, you don't want to miss the next episode. Thanks for listening and for all your support as we just celebrate milestones that are really only happening because of our faithful listeners.
Mhm.
If you want to support our work, you can also do so by visiting our Buy Me a Coffee page at buymeacoffee.com/curious conversations.
Yeah, and as always, if you love our podcast, be sure to subscribe. We want you to share it with a friend. And if you have something curious you'd like to share or an idea for an upcoming episode, you can send us an email at ourcuriouspodcast@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you.